Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an experience of a lifetime. Allow my group and I to take you on a journey of just an hour and a half. We present to you a never-before-seen, once-in-a-lifetime, game-changing app. We introduce to you the Recruiter. Now, before we take you through this amazing journey of this app that we've created, I'd like to tell you a story of life before the Recruiter. Please assume positions. So, once upon a time, there was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Justin Harrison from KPMG. Mr. Justin Harrison had come to Rose University with the pursuit to network with students for purposes of getting some recruits. Over here we have Mr. Justin Harrison at one of our networking sessions at the Ratty Parrot, engaging with Ms. Fakanda and Ms. Trish Bunu. Mr. Justin Harrison is overwhelmed and bombarded by these two ladies who are just wanting him to provide a job. Mr. Sosa Demanda over here, as you can see, is not getting FaceTime with Mr. Justin Harrison from KPMG. Instead, he is indulging in the finer things in life: free booze and pizza. Upon Justin's leaving, the students give him their CVs. Justin is overwhelmed and doesn't know what to do with these CVs, but the girls are just hoping for a job. Mr. Sosa Demanda did not get FaceTime with Mr. Justin Harrison, therefore, no job for you, Sosa. Sorry. Now I present to you a second scenario: life with the Recruiter. We have Mr. Justin Harrison again from KPMG, who has come to Rose University to network with students for recruitment. Mr. Justin Harrison over there is using our game-changing app, which helps him put a face to the name and get to know students before arrival. By the time he meets the students, he now knows who is who and has read through all their CVs and can now engage in a substantial conversation. Mr. Justin Harrison can even approach Sosa Demanda as he has seen him on the app. Sosa Demanda is now no longer just indulging in the finer things in life, but gets some time with Mr. Justin Harrison. Now all three candidates are potential recruits from Mr. Justin Harrison, who then writes notes on each of them using the app. This is just a skit to show you, to put the app into context for you, and everything we'll do from now on will be based on this. Thank you very much.
So hi everyone. As we're going to go through, we're going to go through a team introduction, business requirements, MVP, metaphor matrix, paired triangles, 4 key objects. Then we're going to go project management, marketing, campaign, and then right at the end you're going to see the really cool thing, which is the app and the user interface. So just to introduce the team, myself is Justin Harrison, I'm the product owner. We've got Odi Lahasa here, who's the lead, the team lead. We've got Fakanda you see there, which is the lead designer. We've got Trish Bunu, which is the lead analyst. And we've got Sosa Demanda, our head, the lead programmer. Before we start, I just want to, as a team, before we demo this app, we as a team want to go through the business problems and solutions that we've come through, the whole step we've gone through this whole project, in order for you to gain a better understanding of the problem and solution. Some of the problems that we found was that companies had inability to access students' information before they came and visit the universities for presentations or social events. Therefore, weren't able to understand who was in the class beforehand. Also, students who missed through the recruitment process, and therefore companies failed to identify potential candidates, as you saw in the role play where they can get quite overcrowded. Also, information overload for companies where they have to now sift through piles and piles and piles of CVs just to find a specific piece of information that they're looking for. Also, a major thing is when companies do come down for presentation of social events, and when they have conversations with students, they tend to forget what they had the conversation, or what the conversation was all about later on in the recruitment process. Then from the student side, what the team identified was that students also had a lack of company information. I mean, they could go on the internet, but to have information there for you whenever you want to read it, it is a lot better, and that's the student's fault. Also, difficult to engage with the companies, as there's probably only 2 or 3 reps that do come down, and then there's 35 students that everyone's trying to fight for to have a conversation with the company rep. Therefore, students found it difficult to get noticed, and then also students found it was difficult to contact the right person in order to hand CVs or manuscripts and covering letters. And then from the problems and our engagement with our client, some of the user requirements that we got for this app in order for it to work efficiently and effectively was to have a student and company profile with all the relevant information on it. Then to have file uploads where you can upload your CVs, your manuscripts, and your covering letters, all other relevant information. Also a photo upload, which is very vital, because on your profile to have a photo with the name, so you can put a face to the name. Therefore, the companies, when they do come down, they can identify the face that they saw on the profile and then associate the name to it. And then note-taking ability, which was quite a big one, is that companies felt that they struggled to regain what they spoke about during their social events, so they can just take notes, as you saw in the demonstration. And then the venue booking system for presentations, where companies could look at the system and see when there's an available slot during the academic year when they can come do their presentations. Then there's also an employment status, which companies would love to see from the student's profile side, to see whether the student's already been employed or whether he's unemployed, or whether the student's wanting to further their studies and do masters. So from the user requirements or problems that we identified, we were able to draw up the solution of what the app we want to do. And I have sort of touched on it, but just to say, it was able that students that companies can view students' profiles before university visits to get to understand the students beforehand, so that when they engage them, it's a lot smoother engagement. And company information is readily available for students to view, where they can view it whenever and wherever they want to. Companies can make bookings via a booking system. And then companies can take notes and conversations with the students, which enhances the recruitment process later on in the stage of the year, where they can discuss what they spoke about before. And then also companies are able, and company staff or reps are able to access the information on the move all the time. So even while they're traveling down to Gramson or to UCT or wherever, they can be on the plane on their phones and looking at the information just to gain more information about students or any other relevant information. So from that, we're going to look at, so we've now touched into the problem and the solution. We're going to look at the cost breakdown for the app as a whole. From the assessment that we did as a team, we believe that the cost would estimate to a fee around 400,000 Rand. And this fee would include the cost to cover the documents produced, the user interface, the personal profiles and where the data is stored, note-taking abilities, the app icon, and then also the login session. Right. We also, from the user requirements, decided to generate some process for it to understand how we're going to get this app to work and how the processes will flow with companies and students interacting with the app. Here are some of the process flows which which you can view it's in the business plan, right at the back of the appendices if you want to look through them during the presentation. These process flows will be demonstrated to you later with the app demonstration in more detail, so you get a better understanding of them. Then we'll move on to a process that we did in order to gain as well a better understanding of our problem, and then also to find a solution. which is the metaphor process. Metaphor process includes a metaphor matrix, 4 key objects, and then also the Parisian triangles. So from there we move on to the metaphor matrix, where you can see that the metaphor matrix is made of a table here where there are metaphors at the top, and then these are all the attributes and components that are going to be featured within the app. So just to highlight what a metaphor is, a metaphor is basically a story where all users, either customers, programmers or managers, is a story where they can tell how the app will work. So yeah, those are the metaphors, and then there's attributes. Then we move on to 4 key objects. The 4 key objects are taking your metaphors that you've now identified. Sorry, hold on.
That's fine.
Graham? Oh, sorry, Graham, you're welcome. We have started already.
I've been online with the requirements.
Yes, okay. Graham, maybe if you mute your side, sorry guys, this is all Graham from KPMG. Yeah,
welcome, Graham.
Hello, Graham.
Thanks. There was someone else in the problem with the and not me.
I was just testing things, Graham.
So, that was Cole, sorry. Okay, Graham, we're going to continue and you just follow us.
I'm on you.
Alright, thank you. Okay, sorry about that, guys.
No.
So, from the metaphors, we now look at the 4 key objects, and your 4 key objects are basically, these are all each metaphor here, and your 4 key objects are now enhancing the understanding of the metaphors through different words that can be used, so you can better understand the problem and then further attain a solution to the problem. From the 4 key objects, we then move to the Parisian triangle, which it basically helps you understand your HVP, which is a hypothetical value proposition. And then in order for a step-by-step solution, how you're going to go from one step to the next step in order to get your solution in the end. As you can see, over here, the triangles, we've now got all the metaphors over here at the end here, so we can understand that we're going through each metaphor in order to get to a solution. And each triangle is basically a sprint that we've gone through in order for us to step from sprint to sprint to get to the end product right over here, where we can communicate with the app, we can book things and view profiles. I will now hand over to Buddy. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Justin. I'll now take you through how the project was managed. So essentially what we built is we built a recruitment professional networking app. And how we went about doing this is we had iterative planning, we had team management, task management, sprints, as well as a set of tools which we used and some lessons learned over the sprints. In terms of planning iteratively, as a team, we would all meet every Friday to plan for sprints. So during sprint 0, we would meet on that Friday to plan for sprint 1. We would use our backlog, our product backlog, and assign some stories from the backlog to the following sprint. So this was also based on the Parisian triangles that Justin showed you, which illustrated each sprint. So for instance, for the company sprint, we would sit down and take all the company-based user stories and assign them to the following sprint. We also had daily Scrum meetings, which we would meet around our sprint board. We would meet every morning around our sprint board. This is just the one board to show the 3 sprints. We had 6 sprints in total. So with this board, we would then monitor our progress per sprint. We would move our backlog, we would move our user stories from the backlog to in progress, then testing, and then completed. But sometimes we could move them back from completed back to testing, because due to the environment we're using, things would work the first time and not the second time around. So stories would have to be returned back to testing and tested all over again. also make it a priority to meet with our client every Friday in order to iteratively refine the client requirements and add these new features to the app every sprint. Although sometimes we could not meet with our client because our client was busy. So we did make it a priority, however, to meet as a team every Friday and every day for Scrum meetings. With regards to team management, we realized at an early stage that our team is made up of 4 extroverts and 1 introvert. While this made for an interesting brainstorming session, it did mean that our Scrum meetings were quite noisy and took a while for us to focus and get to the plan. So occasionally we would need one team member, usually Trish, to just bring us all back together again and help us focus. Because we had our Scrum meetings at 8:30, or we had them planned for 8:30 every morning, but they only actually started at about 5:09 in the mornings. So just to show the nature of our personalities in the group. This did not, however, hinder our progress as a team, because due to the sprint board, everybody knew the task that they had to perform for that day. So although we were quite bubbly and quite very everywhere in terms of our personalities, when the work needed to be done, we all put our heads down and get the work done in order to complete the app. And in terms of areas of expertise, at the very beginning again, we assessed all our strengths and our areas of expertise in the group to try and establish who is better at what and to assign roles accordingly. So for instance, we had Sosa Damana over here, who had done ComSci 3, so the only one in the group who did ComSci 3, and by default we assigned him the lead developer. He was very comfortable in that role because that's his strength and he knows how to develop really well. But this did not mean that the rest of the team just sat back and did no coding. We also just put in some effort, collaborated, and helped Sosa to code. This also meant that the lead developer, for instance, would supervise the whole development process. So while we all have tasks to complete in MIT App Inventor, Sosa would supervise everything to make sure that the app is coming together very nicely. We also had Wakanda as a lead designer who felt very comfortable in that role and initially, from the very beginning, took on the design role from using NinjaMark to design all the screens and then going on to MIT and designing the screens and the interface again. Again, to show team flexibility, we all got out of our comfort zones and started tapping into some design, tapping into some development and testing, just so we could all collaborate and share efforts in order to complete the task. In terms of task management, we used Easy Backlog and the Sprint Board. So Easy Backlog is a tool which helps you manage your product backlog and to assign stories to sprints. So we used Easy Backlog not just for allocating, not just for sprint or app-based stories, but also for team tasks outside of the app. So for the back-end type of work, so the documentation, we used Easy Backlog to manage that entire process. So I'll just take you through our Easy Backlog just to show you how we manage our product backlog as well as our team tasks. So over here is our product backlog, going all the way down. So initially at the beginning, after what Justin had mentioned, after meeting with the client, getting the client requirements, understanding the business problem through using the system metaphors, we met as a team and derived a set of user stories based on how we understood the problem and how we understood the proposed solution. So we sat down and compiled all these stories as a team in order to create an app that works and meets the solution. After doing that, we used an app or a tool called Scrum Poker, which is basically on your phone, and then we use this to score each story, to allocate points to each story. So points are a measure of complexity of a story. So we meet as a team and we'll assign points to each story. So for instance, half a point would be a relatively easy story or task to complete. whereas 5 points would be a more complex task to complete. We then realized that we would split up the points, the total points, which was 100 points for the entire project, between the team members over the 5 weeks. And we realized that each member had to complete 3 points per week in order to ensure that the work was evenly distributed, as well as to ensure that we completed the task at hand. Over here we had themes, so we then allocated stories to various themes based on how we wanted to manage our backlog. Here we have an authentication theme, a system capability theme, an information access theme. Those 3 themes were all for the backlog, for the app backlog, app product backlog. The following themes were there for our team just to manage our tasks. So we had testing, and we had business understanding here with the documentation, the whole domain documentation, business plans, user manual. So just to understand the business problem much better. So that was the business understanding theme, and then we had the user interface theme as well. All of these were all the tasks that we were responsible for, which came together to complete the project. And then again, back to the sprint board. We used the sprint board, which we stuck up in our cubicles in our group, so that we could have a visual representation of our sprint progress. So like I mentioned, we would move each story around from backlog through to completion, and we could then see who was responsible for what and how far we were from completing that sprint. So again, sorry, please just bring the board again. The difference between Easy Backlog and our board is that on our board we had various stories. On our board we had various user stories or tasks, and we allocated them to the various team members. So we had that one, Trish managing that, and Fakana and Odi and Sosa as well. So then we knew what Sosa was working on at which point in the sprint. So that was good for just reviewing the sprint and checking progress. Thank you, Trish. And then sorry, back to Easy Backlog again. Just to confirm our planning, we had our burn down chart to show you that our planning and the way we executed our tasks was almost perfect, because we planned our tasks over there, the blue being the trend and the red being what actually happened. So we burned down our points in an almost even manner throughout the project, which is quite commendable. And yeah, that's what happened. I'll now also take you through our sprint retrospectives, just to give you a feel of how each sprint went on. But because we had 6 sprints, I'll only take you through 3 of our sprints, just to take you through some of the goals, the challenges we faced, and how we solved those challenges, and what went well in each of those sprints. So we started off with sprint 0, which we called the planning sprint. In this sprint, our goals were to investigate similar apps. So apps such as LinkedIn, and how it is similar, or how we can improve an app of that nature. So we investigated similar apps. We documented our business understanding through business plans, domain documents, Persian triangles, and system metaphors, just to further understand again what the problem is and where we're trying to go with the proposed solution. We also wanted to create a product backlog using Easy Backlog, as well as our sprint board over here. And we wanted to design a prototype which was directly aligned to our Persian triangles. So then we did that through the use of NinjaMock, which Fakanda will demonstrate to you at the end of our presentation. Some of the challenges that we incurred during this sprint is that we noticed that because this was the first time using the MIT App Inventor, the team was not familiar with the environment. So a challenge for us was understanding how to use it and how to maximize the capabilities of MIT. So a solution that we came across is that we should all go home and practice. So be it creating a little app, a game app or anything else, just creating any app just to play around and get a feel for the MIT app environment, because we knew that all of us would at some point be developing in this environment. So we used YouTube tutorials, we had online help just to learn how to do certain things, especially basic things like creating a profile, viewing a profile, and so forth. What went well in the sprint is that we noticed that our planning was almost perfect because all the sprints or all the stories that we had planned for the sprint were all completed. So all the stories that were on sprint 1 on the board were all completed in that sprint. So that reflected to us that our planning was realistic. We also managed to translate the metaphors into a product prototype. And then we demonstrated that to Graham to show him how we have understood the user requirements, the user expectations, and then he gave us feedback which we then added onto the design. In Sprint 2, we had some goals which were to accomplish all the company-based user stories. So because our app has 3 main users, the admin, the student, and the company, we split up our sprints into those very roles. So the one sprint, which is Sprint 2, was for us to accomplish all the company-based user stories and ensure that the company side of the app is complete by the end of Sprint 2. We also wanted to fix some of the defects which we had identified through testing in the previous week, and we also wanted to research ways to upload user profile pictures. Because our client mentioned very explicitly that he wanted to have a picture or put a face to the name when he came and met students. So we knew that that was an important feature for the app, to have the picture on the user profile. And we also wanted to research ways of deactivating users because of the nature of our app. Students leave at the end of the year and they need to be deactivated from the app. We realized that deactivating students would be better than deleting the student completely from the app, because then you want to store the information, or should you want to collect data to assess the performance or the relevance of the app in the future. Some of the challenges that we experienced in this sprint is that we realized that the number of the screens on App Inventor, the more screens you had on App Inventor, the slower the performance of the app. So we did get a warning from the beginning that the minute you go beyond 10 screens per app, the performance may lag. So because of the nature, again, of our project, we could not have less than 10 screens. So the solution that we came up with is to have 2 separate apps and to share the weight between the 2 apps. So create an admin app and a company student app. But however, with the company student app, we couldn't completely eliminate the rest of the screens and limit it to 10 screens. So we had about 14 screens for this app, which was better than it was the first time, but it also did lag the performance of the app just a bit. What went well in this app is that we managed to complete, again, the admin app. So the one part of our project was complete at Sprint 2. Our final sprint, which is this sprint, Sprint 5, some of the goals that we had were to clean up the user interface and to present it to other HCI or design experts in the department to get a feel for how they perceive our app to be. So we managed to take it to John McNeil, who then commented on our app and gave us some advice, which we then implemented into the app. We also showed some design experts in our class just to get a feel for how they perceive the app to be. And they too gave us feedback, which we implemented into our design. We also we wanted to fix all the defects which we had identified throughout testing and the whole project. So we went back to all the defects that we had initially, even though they were fixed, we went back to them to check whether they were really fixed right at the end. We completed our user manual, and we wanted to also complete our developer's guide, which is a guide for should a developer want to create our app again. And finally, we wanted to present this app. The challenges and the solutions that we came up with is, one of the challenges was that the app performance was dependent on the device which was being used. So for instance, the device we're presenting our app with is a tablet, but our group also has cell phones. So many of the times when we would build the apps on the various devices, they would perform differently or they would look different on each device. Because the tablet is bigger, it would fit perfectly, but then on your phone it would be a bit squashed. So we had to work around that and see what we could do about it. So we decided finally to create an app or user interface specifically for tablet view, because that's what we're presenting to you today. And what went well is that we managed to complete the entire app at Sprint 4 level. And in Sprint 5, we spent the sprint just adding extra functionality, adding nice to haves, things that the client hadn't asked for, but that would make for an exceptional user experience. Some of the tools that we used, I'll just take you, well, these are all of the tools we used actually. We used Easy Backlog for planning for product backlog, as well as the Sprint board to manage our product backlog. We used Scrum Poker, which is, here's a screenshot of how Scrum Poker works. And those are the points which each member would assign to the story, and it would all meet and gather and decide on the final point that we'd get to that story. So we had Scrum Poker, the Sprint board again for managing our product backlog and managing our sprint progress. We had Ninja Mock to prototype our app, which is what Vakando worked on initially from the beginning. And then we had Kickstarter, which we used as a marketing tool. So should we need to market our app or seek funding for our app, we did all of that using the Kickstarter tool. And then we used How Much to Make an App. This is a tool that calculates everything from labor to the time to the tools that you're using, all of that. It calculates all of that to give you a cost of your app, of making your app. So we use that to derive the figure that Justin specified at the beginning. We then used Excel for testing. So we created test cases on Excel, and we also had a defect logger on Excel, which we monitored daily to fix all the defects which we identified. We used the MIT App Inventor as a development environment, which Sosa will also take you through at the end. And we also used a collection of Google tools such as Fusion Tables, Gmail, Google Maps, Google Drive, as well as the calling function. Some of the lessons that we learned throughout this project, both from the app side and just from the overall project, is that we learned that the use of the problem statement and the system metaphor in understanding the user requirements is very important, because that whole process that Justin had taken you through is what we went through as a team to better understand what it is exactly that our client requires. So that whole process, we brought our heads together to come and produce a proposed solution, which is our app. We also realized that collaborating with other teams is very important in terms of problem and solution sharing. So not just collaborating with each other or the YouTube tutorials, but going to other teams and asking them if they had figured something out, or sharing something which we had figured out, which they hadn't figured out yet. We also realized that managing user expectations is very, very important. Justin, our product owner, many times had to just manage our client expectations and just limit the scope to a minimum viable product. And everything else that was nice to have, keeping that all to the end. So we managed to do that. We also realized that an important note is lateral thinking beyond the box. Many a times we realized that we were restricted by, be it the environment we were using, tools we were using, but we could not dwell on that too much. We had to make sure that we did the most we can. We did the most we could to make the most out of the app. So we had to think outside the box, and oftentimes, I remember for viewing a list of students, initially we had a table on our app which would display all the students in the app. And that table was taking too long to load, and we had to regroup and think of another solution. And eventually we came up with a list view as opposed to the table view, which works perfectly fine. And so also we'll demonstrate that later to you. Some of the lessons that we learned in terms of the project, so our experiences, is that we realized that the project, we learned how to use the Agile methodology. I don't think any of us had used the Agile methodology before this, and now we can walk away, go into industry saying we know how Agile works, and the iterative planning, iterative additions of new functionality into a system. We also realize that teamwork is very important. You cannot work in a silo. You cannot work by yourself. Sosa, for instance, was the lead developer, had the most knowledge of developing, but he could not work by himself. He had to share some of his ideas with us, and we would then think of solutions and then share them with him, and we just bounce ideas off of each other. So that was very important as well. And then as well, we also learned that you could gain a better understanding of doing business with the client and managing client relationships. So again, never before this project did we have an experience where we could engage with the real life client, get client requirements, and produce a system or an app that appeals to what the client had asked for. And this experience has truly taken us through all of that. I'll now hand over to Trish, who will show you how we did our marketing as well as our testing for the app.
Thank you, Odie. So in order to test our app, we incorporated functional testing and non-functional testing. With functional testing, we wanted to make sure that we were achieving our requirements. We were basically asking ourselves, is our app achieving what we wanted to do? Is it doing what we intend for it to do? And then with non-functional testing, besides our app doing achieving the requirements, we also wanted a high-quality app. And each sprint was tested before moving up to the next sprint. Okay, and under these board headings, we incorporated various testing techniques. For instance, use case testing, where we identified test scenarios. For instance, if a student clicks on a company name, is the student able to view the company profile? Is the student able to move from one screen to another? Those are the things we were testing under use case testing. And then performance testing, we wanted to test speed and effectiveness of the application. That means when you click on a particular button, is it doing what it's supposed to do as fast as it should do? Are you moving? Is it taking you 5 minutes to move from one screen to another? And then also usability testing. Not only did we give our app to people within our honors class, but we also gave it to other people to see whether our colors, our screens, our buttons, they understood what they meant. And then with document testing, I think you can see with the documents in front of you, those documents are probably version 100 because we continually updated them. As the project evolved, we got to understand it more. So our business requirements changed. Those things that were part of the most viable product maybe became an additional functionality and vice versa. And then the software testing process. So at the beginning of each sprint, we would identify test cases. And then this was conducted every Friday. So for instance, we have this story here. It says, as a student, I want to be able to log into the system so I can access my profile. And this was done by Audi and Soso. So it would move from each phase to the next. Once it gets to the testing phase, it means the lead tester has to start testing. And then once it moves to the completed stage, it means all of us as a team start testing. So that's how the sprint board helped us in terms of testing.
Is that what you displayed during the protests?
Pre-test.
Completed.
Okay, and this is the Excel spreadsheet that we used when it came to testing. If you look at this, I'm going to look at test case 5. So if you look at test case 5, user enters a valid username and valid password, then clicks on the login button. The system displays the home page. I took this from after the first sprint. At this point, this was a fail, but it's now a pass. And then if you look at the next test case, user enters valid name and invalid password. And then user enters invalid username and invalid password. So these are some of the test cases we had. And we tested together as a team, but in this case, if you look at the first test case, user logs in from more than one device. So in a test case like this, you'd need to test it as a team. So if I couldn't test that by myself, so hence why it is highlighted in yellow, because it needed us to test together. Okay, and with software testing, we experienced some challenges, a few challenges. But I can say we also enjoyed it. I think once you identify a test case, there are more that keep on coming. You keep on thinking of more things that could damage the system or that could create a bug. So early fault detection reduced faults for the future. It really helped us because we did testing for every sprint, so we didn't have to now test for all these problems in sprint 6. And then inefficiencies in software were identified through metrics such as root cause analysis. So basically, once you identified a problem, you wanted to know why was that problem happening, and why was that problem happening, and why was that problem happening. So it helped us to identify other things that we weren't even thinking of. And then the UI bugs slowed down the actual testing process. So we had to wait for a UI to be established before we could actually do testing. And sometimes that slowed us down. So some of the things we wanted to test in sprint 1, we would have to test in sprint 2. And then not everyone had the right tools to test effectively. At one point we had an iPad and 2 phones, then 1 phone and an iPad, then 3 phones. So this is something that also slowed down our testing. Okay, I'll move on to the marketing. Okay, so in order to raise funds for our application, we incorporated crowdsourcing, and in order to achieve this, we decided to use Kickstarter. And with Kickstarter, we basically people can view our system, and basically we illustrated our system in a nutshell. We just explained our system, we looked at recent challenges, we looked at the team as a whole and what we're trying to achieve as a team. And then for people that actually do sponsor us, for instance, if you look at this, if you sponsor, if $2 is pledged towards the project Big Boss, our project is called Big Boss, but the application itself is called the Recruiter. So if you sponsor $2, the team will in return have gratitude to the sponsor. When you get to specific amounts, please scroll down. If you sponsor $1,000, the team will in return have external gratitude to the sponsor and a better version of the app to test and play with. The team will also recognize the individual in the list of names that helped create the app. So your name will appear as one of the people that helped in creating our app if you sponsor $1,000. So you guys can sponsor today. But basically this is how we plan on raising funds. We haven't yet published it, but we will publish it in the future. I'll hand over to Sophie.
Thank you very much, Jared. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to connect the laptop. So
sorry, the demo.
Yeah, demo.
Just maximize the
Okay.
That's infinite regression.
This is for this to start up. Basically, in order to bring this app into perspective, I think we should remember the story of, let's say, Fakana, who couldn't get FaceTime with the client. The client would come to the writer pad, the client would come to biography to present, there would be a meet and greet at the Hamilton department. The more excitable students, if you call it that, would go and speak to the client, they would have all the FaceTime. The client wouldn't know about Fakana, probably wouldn't know about the students that are speaking to, and Fakana would miss out on that opportunity of getting recognized and of getting her CVs, her motivation letters out there to the client. So what we've tried to do with this app, we've tried to give Fakana the chance. Give her the chance to upload her CV, her motivation letter, her transcript, give her the chance to upload her profile so that she can be seen by the companies before they arrive. Even the companies can make contact even before they arrive with Fakana if she has impressed them to that extent. So as mentioned earlier on, we created 2 apps, and I think before we show that, let's show the back end a bit of I'm just going to go to the computer. Sorry, just to expose the back end that is driving the app. So here this is MIT App Inventor, and I'm sure as you might have seen yesterday, it resembles Scratch. We have a few storage components running on the app. We've got a TinyDB, which is local storage. I'm mentioning these now because I will reference them as the presentation goes on. So we've got TinyDB, which controls the local storage. We'll see that when we demonstrate the notes that the company's been making. We've got fusion tables that store relevant data. So right here we've got the student table or the student profile table, which would have all the students that are already registered in the system. We've got a presentation booking table, which will drive the presentations. We've got a files table, which I'll elaborate on later. And we've got company profiles. We also have a credentials table that is storing but we also have a credentials table that is storing all the passwords, the roles, the activation status, and the usernames. Unfortunately, we couldn't hash these passwords, but we are trusting Google's secure language to protect that table and only give access to the table to people who have that link. And for this, we're using a service account which authorizes the ins and outs into the database. So just for security concerns, we did consider that we might get assisted. Now I think let's get to the app. We'll start by demonstrating the admin app. We've got a splash screen that's just to tell us, okay, there's the admin recruiter. Then we've got a disclaimer. Because of the nature of the information that we're storing on the app, we need the user to give consent that you can store my personal information. We tell them that it will be protected under the POPI Act, which is the Protection of Private Information. Also, as we'll see a little bit later on, there will be on our site there's a terms and conditions screen that you can read fully. So when you understand fully what you're doing, you can give us the information, knowing who's going to be seeing it and knowing who basically will have access to it. We also make one of the challenges of the app really with the technology that we could use was that we wanted to make sure that the data is private. So you couldn't use other tools like TinyWebDB, which are public, and anyone can see this because we don't want to put someone's CV or someone's transcript out there for anyone to just see. We want to control who sees that information. So if you disagree with this, it will close the app. Then if you agree with it, then we'll go on to the crossover. So now we'll present the admin app. We'll show some validation rules as we go on, and we'll just progress like that. So Fakana, my associate here. So if you just press login, we'll tell you please fill in all the fields. So let's have the admin username then. Then let's have some password. Oh, you went straight for the credit card, but it's fine. There is a. Oh, we went back. Okay, yeah, we did validate passwords. Great password. Just in terms, and that's for so the admin in this, maybe I should mention, would be maybe the course coordinator, Rob, who is usually the interface between the companies and the students. So he'd be the one who would probably be using this app. And for version 1 at least, we've restricted the roles of the admin to just access control. Give passwords, assign activation status, and future versions, when we look at passwords, for example, let's manage student, when future versions may consider to link the admin student, may consider to link the password functionality to maybe the ICT domain, so that whatever password you use for the Hamilton Labs computers you can use for this app, but that could be considered in the future. For now, we are just assigning those credentials as the admin. So now we'll assign Fakana some credentials. Then we'll give a password. What we've done in terms of, let's just show if it's less, what we've done in terms of password complexity, we don't want to have people having maybe 4-character passwords, 5-character passwords. Those are pretty easy to guess if you know the person. So we've tried to make it that you have to have at least or more than 8 characters in your password. In the future, you may consider other forms of password complexity like foreign characters or capital letters, but at this stage we haven't done it. We've just restricted it to length. If you don't mind, we'll just fix it up just a bit. So we have, now we'll enter the password for Fakanda. Now this will be stored in the credentials table once you can see student. So student has successfully been added. You can dismiss that. Now the admin can also view the students that are added that currently exist on the system. And again, as already mentioned, we used a computer will tab out once more. But as already mentioned, we used a list view to show which students are registered on the table as opposed to linking to the table, because that was taking some time to load. So in this case, we're substituting that. So as you see here, we've got students that are activated and deactivated. In order to deactivate a student, which is what the admin can do, they can tap on an activated student. Do you want to deactivate a student? Yes, then it deactivates that student. That was Toriro's process, so deactivated her now. We could activate her again by just tapping on an activated. So do you want to activate the student? Say Tori is now back from wherever she went, and she's now back in the department. We activate her again, making her visible to the client. Now we'll go and manage the companies. Managing the companies follows the same system, but for the purpose of this presentation, we'll just show that side also. You can add company, and the crash was so I just restarted. You can add company, and so you have the company name, so KPMG maybe, since Grab is here. KPMG, then you assign KPMG a password, the same validations would apply. And then so you assign that that password.
Just the re-enter that you're not doing.
Re-enter and then just re-enter the same thing and then
You always get users.
so just make sure you clean that. If you add that company, so now the company has also been successfully added. You can then view the companies. Same thing you could do for the students. And at this stage, this is basically what I mean. And from this, you can deactivate companies. So you can deactivate maybe PSG. You deactivate PSG. Then it will deactivate them. This will also update the table that you saw in the beginning. You can reactivate them. Should you mention them? Yeah. So at this point, this is all that the admin can do. Just assign access, assign an activation status, assign a role, and the roles will be very important when we go on to the next app, which we can now show. And I think the another reason for making a separate admin app and for separating the admin app to the company and student app is that there was a security concern from a client, especially that we don't want to know the whereabouts of the of the admin role. So if you want to be using the app as a company and a profile, and you know, as a student, and you know that the admin data is around here. So just to make sure that the security concern is catered for, we removed the admin app completely from that. This resulted in a 10 screen admin app and a 14 screen company profile app, which crashed once in a while, but I mean it gets the job done, and we're okay with that. So if you're saying same thing when I apply for the companies and the students, if you agree to that, then it will take you onto the app. If you click login, just click login, just so you can show some of the other validation. So please fill in all fields. Now we'll leave the role selector as select role and try put in a user there. Basically, we have a spinner that will show just after this demonstration. We have a spinner at the top that makes you choose which role you use. The company is a student, and it passes that role onto the app. So that role is the one that governs then how the screen behaves and how the app behaves. If you try to log in without selecting a role to tell you an appropriate role must be selected, and I think just before you carry on, if I can just clear the password and try and let's get an existing student, maybe G1 to D1, 2, 3, 4. So we can demonstrate the forgot password functionality. For this again, security concerns. the information that you have to input here might be fairly accessible to everyone. For version 1, you might know my email address, you might know my contact number, and then in that way you may be able to get my password. This is something that we know is possible. Future versions may consider more complex ways of controlling the forgot password. So email address, we'll have to check. Do you know it? We might have to, let's just check the credentials. Email address that you want to use to just say and campus start dealing with. So you input your email address, then you input your contact number. These are stored in the student profile table, and basically this screen will then contact both tables. It will contact the student table. It will also contact the credentials table. Then to match those two tables based on the credentials that you have put in there. So as soon as she inputs her number, or my number, it's a G99. Submit. So there's my password, SO1234. So I can take it and I'll be able to log in. So let's go back to the main page, and then we'll facilitate Fakanda's first interaction with the system. Might want to select your role then as a student. So she will select her role as a student because she's a student. If she would select a role as a company and try to log in, we'll block that also because we don't want you making on that side. We've blocked that using the role control and also the password control. So now you should be able to log in. We're presented with a wide scope, and we really try to capture it as best as possible onto our app. If I kind of have to press login twice there, just to give the table a chance to initialize. So for Fakanda's first time entry up, she sees her read-only profile because she hasn't registered onto the system yet. This is black. So to populate that, she would need to go to the top, or maybe let's raise awareness of the help functionality that is. So what we have here is the recruiter website. Basically, this is where all the help is in the terms and conditions. You can access that from any page. It will link. It will take you to the recruiter, a summary of the app, and how to install and other things. Also, we didn't do a button because we were very skeptical about it might make the page look a little congested without design. So we put a link at the bottom of every page that from any page you can access that help functionality. You should be able to go back to the app. So now Fakanda needs to go and edit her profile. So what we've done here, we've made this read-only because we don't want you to be inputting someone else's student number and then never being able to query their table and changing their information. So that's why we've had the student number here pre-coded in for you, and it's a read-only option. Now Fakanda can, oh yes, maybe I should explain this part. We had a challenge trying to get image uploads and file uploads onto our app. Code was made available to us to use by our lecturer, and we played around with that. The code was very specific to that app, and the challenge was to try and work it around to be able to work with our app. A few days before this presentation, one of the people who were working with figured it out. Then we had to try and get that to be for our app. There was a trade-off. Do we go on and spend more time trying to get that to work, or do we find something that works for version 1? So what works for version 1 as it stands is basically just pasting shortened URLs. You paste shortened URLs onto the link table, and that should take that picture and put it into our files table. Then you put in your name there. I've made all those fields required so you don't have any gaps at the end. So Fakanda will try to populate that as clear as she can. Just there, Fakanda, if you try and go to the citizenship field, so it says that email address is invalid, you can dismiss that. If you put an @ there, I'll explain this now. Just go to the next field again. Okay, that's fine. So now you can go to the contact now. So that was email validation. We just want to make sure that emails are going proper contact number. For version 1, we've just restricted to South African numbers. We've just restricted to South African numbers, and there's also a control there. Just for the interest of time, we will be trying to just get through it as quickly as possible. Then citizenship, putting your citizenship. This is very important with recruiting because we need to know if you're South African or you're international, so we know what type of work we can give to you or we can't give to you depending on how you want to think about it. And you've got the employment status, unemployed, employed, wanting to study further. This is translated into an input onto the fusion table and available for interviews with given the users the freedom here to write whatever they want, because we don't want to restrict it to some date or some time picker because they're all unavailable at different times. So if the company wants to come and interview a student, they need to be able to know when they are able to do that, when they're not available to do that. So now we'll paste the LinkedIn account or company preferences. That was also very important for our client. You want to see who's interested in you so that you know who to speak to. And if you are not really interested in what the type of work that you do, then you know not to speak to those people. So we also have the LinkedIn account. Then we'll be pasting the CV link and the transcript link. So these basically use Activity Starter to open these links outside of the app. Again, it's that whole thing we couldn't figure out a way to securely upload these documents. So we're using this way because this is one that we were certain that we can control, or at least we can control for us. Apologies, this might be slightly control. Try our best. So once these have been saved onto the files table, so the first time that Akana enters, she presses the new info button. If she would come back the second time to make updates, so just go to your profile, my profile. So now the profile that she sees when she logs in will come in pre-populated with the information that she put in when she's free, when she's not free. Now we will just demonstrate this now, so we don't have to demonstrate it later. The companies will be seeing the same profile, but with a note box. I'll just demonstrate the buttons now. If you click on View CV, it will take you to an external link where your CV is. So yeah, we've got, and then it will download it automatically onto your device, so you can view it even later when you want to. Just go back to the app, and then the same will follow for View Motivation and View Transcript. And now Fakanda has been registered, and she probably wants to view some companies. So Fakanda will then press Company Profile. This will give her a list of the companies that are registered. So far we have BSG that we reactivated. So if Fakanda presses BSG, or selects BSG rather, she'll then get BSG's read-only profile, which gets predetermined or pre-inputted information by BSG, who would have access to this app, as we already heard earlier on. They've got all the information. If Fakanda want to go to BSG, she will be able to view location, and this will basically, if she will press that, will take her to, will show her a map of where BSG is. Okay, it will take some time to load, so we'll go back to the app. And then the recruiter, right there with the map. That matter. Where the map is, where the map is, or just sister. So just go back there. Unfortunately, I'm using a Wi-Fi device, so I can't demonstrate the call functionality, but that will just allow the user to call the company. The view website, also it works in a similar way with the others, so you don't have to demonstrate that. But this will view the website that is in the website holder, and again the help function persists throughout the app. So now Fakanda can go back to, if she now wants to view maybe a calendar, which is the last thing that Fakanda is able to do from her side, the calendar. Now here we've got presentation dates that have been booked by the companies. So if Fakanda selects one, it will give her a summary of who is coming when, and then they'll be able to plan accordingly for when they may want to do that. And that's basically what you can do from the student side of the app. Could we just... Okay, so now I'm going to show the company side of things. The company follows the same registration process as the student. I don't know if you want us to demonstrate that also. It follows the same registration process as the student. When you log in for the first time, you create you encounter your read-only profile, which is blank, and then you go to edit profile to populate that. Sorry about that expression. And when you populate that, for them, they don't have CVs, motivation letters, or transcripts. They just throw an image in there, which we'll see as soon as Fakara is able to log in. And that image is basically their logo, which you'll be able to see when you go into the profile. You're missing a 6 there, or KPMG 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Small letter Q. So we've implemented a small social matrix, an interweb of a lot of data, interweb of different roles, seeing different things at different times. So now once you've logged into to your read-only, you can go to your editable profile, then you can link as a company now, you can select a link to your image, which will then be uploaded there so for the users to see. And then once you've done that, it should show the image that you've selected, so that if you want to change it at that time, you're able to change it. You can just write a description of what you look for. So maybe, let's say, because KPMG is hiring for the technology advisory, so we can hiring for then we've got the rep name there, who is Graham Hardy. And then we've got the physical address, which should be inputted there, so that if the student wants to see where exactly they're based, they can go to their map and go and find them in that way. So you know that KPMG is at Embassy House, 1 Mediterranean Street in Cape Town. Then once you've inputted that information, so we'll just give you a chance to do that. And again, this goes back to the story that you want to be able to see, you want to be able to get company information, the company must be able to get student information. Apologies, I'm going to try not to have spaces in there. I'm going to try and speed it up so that we website. So we've got the validations there also for the date. We'll tell you that close date cannot be before the. So this is where basically they put the application opening and closing dates to see, okay, this is when our applications open, this is when they close. Yeah, you didn't write stuff. But anyway, so that's what you do from the company side. Then the company can just show now the last few things. You can select a student profile. So select for kind of example. Just gonna wrap it up very quickly. So when you select for kind of profile, you see already what she's already registered on the app. And then you can write notes on for kind of when you've met them, and that is really facilitated by a tiny DB component. These are stored locally, so no one else can see the notes that you make on certain students. So you can save that, you can retrieve that. And you can also go into there's a LinkedIn button at the bottom. That is also bound in the same way that the others are bound to an external link that will take you to the LinkedIn account. Now just go back to your profile. Then the final thing that the company is able to do is book a presentation. So let's show that calendar. Then here you can book a presentation, but before we book a presentation, yes, fine, just book it. So what you've done, you've hard-coded the time, because this year we had a crisis where one company came at 5 p.m. No one was available to come see them because the usual time is between 10:30 and 12:30. So we're restricting the start time, end time, restricting the venue to very few because that's where all the things are. Then you just book the date that you're coming, and then when you've booked it, it gives you a summary of that. The presentation booking side, because of time, no one will show, but that's basically post presentation. It's got directions to the Hamilton building, so when you arrive in Grahamstown, you can go to the Hamilton building. It's a very wide scope, very big app, and yeah, apologies if we went a little over my time. Now I'll pass on to Fakano who will wrap things up. Thanks.